All right, so let's go ahead and share. So the video is recording. Let's go ahead and share the white space. And we can just go to 372. All right, and then content. So, so this week we're discussing. So we've kind of gone over now all the intro, getting everyone caught up. So hopefully by now, Linux should be starting to feel comfortable to you. You know, you should know how to navigate the environment, practice. It's all about practicing, as you know. This week, last week you were working on services and tools, so we went over that. That handout, I believe that's probably due today. And all of these, right? So this week, then, we started our discussion of task scheduling. Okay, so that's what we started doing. And I haven't finished all the notes, right? So I'll do that next week. I'll go over, you know, any missing, you know, details from the lecture. Today, though, is lab, as you know, so that means practicing. So there is a Wireshark reading again. All right, so remember you have to do a one-page summary of these. And then there's a few slides here on networks and data centers, so I'll cover this next week as well. I started most of this lecture, or covered a lot of it. Definitely Cron, I think, the most important things that you needed for your lab. So let's take a look at the Word document, actually, just to make sure you have everything clear. So this is your lab assignment for this week. This lab assignment, Cron running scripts with Cron, will be due a week from today. So I need to create the drop boxes for that, the links, but I'll do that in a sec. All right, so you should now be seeing the description of that document. So you can see that 372 task scheduling with Cron, running scripts with Cron. That's really the goal. Okay, so there's a question. Okay, all right, so all right, so I'm admitting people still. All right, so the lab content for this week is, as I said, these should be pretty easy. The reading assignments, I think by now everybody understands. Provide a one-page summary. You can use screenshots if you want. So really screenshots, a paragraph at least. I'm not really looking for that much. I just want you to do it, right? So remember, there could be questions about these reading assignments on the exams, on the written exams. So make sure you're doing this and just provide a one-page summary. Now remember that these are interactive reading assignments. So what that means is that, you know, you should download the PCAP files that are provided, and then you open Wireshark, which is already installed in your CDMs, either 2004 or 1604. And then just read the document. There should be a PDF in there somewhere. Read it, follow along, and they're pretty easy to follow along. And the goal is, as you know, Wireshark is a very important tool, and for sysadmin, usually it's showing you how Wireshark works, and then later on there's going to be a few cases that relate to system administration. Why did you have a slow network? Why did you have a printer that didn't work, etc.? And it kind of shows you through the reading how you can use Wireshark to get more information about your sysadmin issues. So I believe the title of the reading assignment this week for Wireshark is called Common Lower Layer Protocol. So take a read through that. Should be easy, very easy to do. As usual, I will create a separate link for the Wireshark, and I'll create a separate link for the Linux commands part. So really, there will be two submissions this week. All right, so what do I want you to do is basically this week, the majority of this lab is about cron, right, or task scheduling. So as I said, you have these 4 problems. Remember, also, I should make a note right now, we're currently on week 4. You have exam 1 on week 6. On the Monday of week 6, that whole period will be a written exam. 10 questions, problems, whatever. And so you will need to start studying for that. So anyway, there will be, as you might imagine, cron problems, and all kinds of things. All right, so basically you have to solve these problems. But before that, as usual, I like to provide, Linux commands that I want you to take a look at and play with them. And this starts to introduce usually topics that will become a topic later on their own, probably. So the first thing I want you to do in the first 12 bullets is TCP dump, right? So TCP dump is a type of Wireshark on the command line. So I'm sure you've probably used it before, or if you haven't done so already, well, here you have it. So really, this is an exploration lab, this part at least. So you're going to create a file to dump all info produced by TCP dump on your desktop. So we've covered the redirection lecture. So we've covered the redirection lecture on Monday. So you can use those techniques now to do this. All right, so create a file to dump all info produced by TCP dump on your desktop. Here is an example command of how to use TCP dump. Right, so you can take a look at that. Notice that when you run it, it may show something like I'm listening to a given device. I think ENS33 or whatever the current interfaces are called. Then basically what I want you to do is as you set up TCP dump to listen, much like you would run Wireshark to listen, you should start doing things on the computer that generate packets, right? You could do, for instance, like visit some websites, and then as you're visiting websites, you'll start to capture some data on the terminal. And you should redirect that into, as I said, some files. So visit some websites. Then after you've collected data for a while, you can kill TCP dump by just typing Control-Z, right? And then if you want to take a look at your file, you can do something like sudo strings TCP dump more, right? So play around with those commands or any commands that you want. You should comment on the data that you see, and then basically maybe you want to, once you have some data, you want to look up some word, right? So view a keyword such as the name of the website you visited from the dump file. So for that, you can try sudo strings TCP dump. That basically generates an output. Remember that the little, this one here, right? We talked about it on Monday. That's called the pipe, and it allows you to basically, whatever the output of this is, right? So whatever the output of this one is, you're gonna take that output and pipe it, imagine, to the next command. And so this command basically takes that, whatever comes out of that pipe as standard in, right? And then it's going to process it. So in this case, you're gonna be using something called grep. We will take a look at grep in a following lecture and just kind of get an intuition for that. But for now, let's just say that you're gonna practice with it. And grep is really a way of finding data, right? So it's like grab. Think of it as that. I'm gonna grab from this the lines that contain my keyword, for instance, where obviously my keyword is the keyword that you're searching. So if you went on YouTube or you went to PNW or some university, right, you can look up that term, okay? And of course, when you do that, show some of your output. So then the questions, as usual, what is TCP dump? All right, so, what is TCP dump? why is it useful for system administration? Okay, so that's something that you can look up as an exploration lab. So that's that should be pretty straightforward, I think, pretty simple. Starts to use some of the concepts. All right, and then after you've looked at that, then you can look at the next one. The next set of problems just have to do with what we discussed on Monday, right, which is task scheduling. So in particular, this shows you how to use Cron or the Cron tab. So here, schedule tasks, or you're going to automate system maintenance or administration. So this is where we start to like automate things. You schedule when you want certain activities to take place. You create scripts so that you're consistent, through all your servers. And so that's really the goal. Okay, that's really the goal. So here, basically, the first thing is you're gonna use cron tab for logging, for instance, right? So you're gonna create a log file. So what is Linux cron? You can answer that because we've already discussed it in the lecture. If you want to open cron, you just go, remember when I type these two greater than symbols instead of the $sign or the pound sign, it means that I'm leaving it to you to figure out what user account you should be on. All right, but basically you can type cron tab -e, right? And then with that approach, it might give you some options. So you can select, for those of you like VI, maybe you can use that, or Nano, which is what we used in the class, right? So that opens really your cron tab, your little text file where you can add entries. So we've already learned how to add entries in the lecture on Monday. So in file, you basically want to add these first two commands. So if you notice, this is just the notation that we discussed on Monday, right? So you should know by now what that does. And then you're going to try two things, uptime and echo. So in echo, you can echo your name. So, your name, echo it, or the uptime, you already know what that is. Notice here, this is the symbols that we talked about on Monday, and it's just redirection. So try this out, figure it out, what the difference is here between 1 greater than and 2 greater than, and then redirect your output to a log file. So you can see that. I do recommend that you put in the full path, okay, the full path. So figure out what your full path is to your file. Whenever you're trying to figure out, let's say that you're on your current working directory where you want your files to appear like desktop, type on the command line pwd. If you type pwd, it gives you the full path of where you are, and minus, I think, the directory that you're currently in. So you just have to add that at the end. Okay? So you will specify the time when the command should be executed. Obviously, if you execute this one, you may not be able to see the results right away, right? So you're going to actually have to tweak this to your current time. Make sure you already know how to set the time on your system. So make sure you have the correct time, and then figure out, all right, I want to print this out like 5 minutes from now, because otherwise, you're not going to see your results. So you'd be surprised how many times students type this and they thought, okay, where's my result? And it's just, it's not on correct schedule. So then, you know what uptime is, so just answer that question. All right, so that basically, this little example here is just meant to get you going with cron tab, okay? So it's just meant for that to happen. Then after that, the next thing that I want to do today is, running scripts with cron tab. So we kind of did this in class. We did this in class. We did this in the theory of the lecture on Monday, right? We went over, how to run the scripts. Today, we're going to see an example of that. So I'll start up the virtual machine, in a sec, and we'll go over this script, okay? So here is, the goal will be, I want you first of all to check the logs folder. So you're gonna cd into the root folder, var.logs, go in there and check out a few logs. So that's the place in the file system where you usually put your log files. So then in there you can do, sudo nano, either messages or syslog. So those are two log files in there, and you can take a look at the information that is there. So then we're gonna write a script. So I'll help you out. Now, usually I don't use that much Perl in this class. However, every now and then I do show Perl just to kind of contrast. I actually don't love Perl. So I just don't like the syntax of it. But we'll cover an example of this. I don't expect to like, learning all the specifics of Perl. It's mainly more of an awareness of what Perl does. But using Perl, we're going to write a script that writes to these logs, okay? So it would be very similar to Python. I frankly think Python would be a lot easier. All right, so then we're going to test the script. So, obviously run it through Perl. And then we're going to check our log. And then what I want you to do is you have to solve this problem, number 10. So you're going to set cron tab to run this script every 4 minutes, okay? And you have to show how that works. Remember, every 4 minutes, okay? And basically you need to log, and it's going to record in that var log in either messages or syslog, okay? You're going to have to look up that entry. So basically in the Perl script, we'll write in something like your name. So you'll put in your name, and then you have to look up your name in the log file that we created. Okay? Okay. All right, and so this I will help you with, obviously, and then finally, you will work on these 4 problems. So you need to implement the cron. Remember, so I want to stress, I'm not just asking you to write the cron entry and that's it. You need to write the cron entry and show it running and show the screenshot, right, with some output. So for instance, write a script and or cron entry to copy a file every Wednesday at 1 a.m. and save it in the specified folder, okay? Then the second one is write a script and or cron entry to check you. So basically you always have to write a cron entry, but what I mean is sometimes it can be an entry in just cron, or sometimes it could be a cron entry that calls the script, okay? So number 2 is write a script and or cron entry to check user statistics. So such as usage, logins, etc. every day at 3 a.m. and then summarize the results to a file such as a log. Number 3, write a script and or cron entry to perform a cleanup. So basically delete some unimportant files. So a cleanup of files in the temp folder several times a day, such as every hour or every 30 minutes. So there I suggest that you just put in some unimportant files in the temp folder and then delete those only. Don't delete all the files in temp, because sometimes you need some of those for what you're doing on the computer. And then number 4, write a script and or cron entry to capture network traffic with TCP dump, which I showed you how to do that before, every day at 4 a.m. and then extract some information from the packet captures, okay? So that's basically the 4 problems that we are going to do for today, or that you have to do, sorry. So these, I'm not gonna solve them. You have to solve them, basically, figure them out. All right, and then here, this problem I will help you out with, this one, okay? So that's what we're gonna do. Are there any questions before we begin? Questions? All right, so I really just need to give you the Perl script. Remember, as I said on Monday, a lot of these scripts are already on your on the GitHub. Okay, so you can always get them from there. But I will, you know, type it up just to kind of illustrate this. So let's go. So let me actually start up my VM. So give me a second here. All right, so I'm starting the virtual machine. And I need to share that. All right, so I think now you guys should be seeing the virtual machine. All right, so there, all right, there it is. All right, so that's our virtual machine. So today, as I said, we are going to just look at Perl a little bit, not in too much detail, but just kind of to make you aware. So that's, you know, there's also Bash. At some point, we'll do a couple of scripts on Bash, and it's just basically to make you aware of these things. So let's, the first thing we want to do is go to the terminal. So here we are. Remember, by now, this should be pretty familiar to you, how to navigate and so on. All right, so 372, spring 2021, there we are. And you know, there's the scripts, right? So most of these have been in the Python language. Perl is an older language that, as I said, very much like COBOL or Fortran or whatever, there might be some, people still use it, and there might be some tools that are in Perl. So certainly knowing it is not a bad thing. You guys can probably, you know, if you can understand Python or one of those scripting languages, you can pick it up. But just be aware, these are not compiled languages, they're scripting languages. So Perl, Python, Bash in the Linux environment. All right, so given this, let's create our first Perl script. So I'm going to call it write to, let's just, so write to log, let's say, okay? The extension will be PL, so Perl. So write to log, write underscore to underscore log dot PL. All right, so basically we're just going to look at this and then take a look at how we run it. So usually when you specify a script, you can add this this thing. It's called a shebang, and it basically means that you specify when you make this script executable, which interpreter should be used. So in this case, you're saying use the Perl script basically. Okay, if it was Python instead of Perl, you'd use Python. So a couple of, this is not very much. We need to make a communication with the logging facility basically of the operating system, because we're going to be writing not to just any generic logging file, but to the var log files in our computer, right? So usually with Perl, you can set up a couple of things like use strict and use warnings. And these are basically, you can also add a comment here. And these are basically things that, you know, it's like compiled, so these are time, so it checks basically. Checking for warnings, checking for errors. So this will print out anything, any bugs that we have. We can say here, enable runtime warnings, for instance. Okay, so that's something that you can do there. Then after that, we are going to use the library for Syslog. So what is Syslog? So Syslog is one of those services, right, that we've talked about in the semester. So it's what defines a server. So you could literally have a server, a Linux server, that is a Syslog server. Basically what it does is it delivers Syslog services, which basically means that it's a centralized place where you can send log information, all right? And the log information, just instead of storing it in each computer, you can centralize it in a server and take a look at all the information together. So basically we can add a comment here and just say, define the library for syslog functions. Very much in Python, you would have pretty much the same thing, an import of syslog itself, right? So here we just say use sys and then syslog. From system, basically we're going to use syslog. All right, and we're going to specify some flags and to use the default socket. Okay, so we don't have to specify anything. We just tell it, okay, use whatever and remember, a socket is a combination of an IP and a port number. So we'll define that a little bit more formally later, but we set the default set log sock, for socket. Okay, add a semicolon. Notice it's got these semicolons. And then once we do that, we want to say for this function set log socket, we're just going to use Unix. Right? So this just means use a Unix domain socket. Socket here. All right, since we are on Unix system. And then finally now, we can open the log. So open log. And let's just write this for now, open log and close log. Right? And in between, we're going to say what we want to write. So we still need to add some parameters, but in here we're going to say syslog, and we're going to write, let's say, info, okay, comma, and then here just write your name. So for instance, I'll just write Purdue here, but you guys can write whatever you want. Probably I would suggest just write your name. So this is called making the system syslog call, or really write to the log. Okay, so now in here in close log, we really don't have to do anything. Just make sure you add these semicolons at the end. Okay, and in open log, we want to basically call another script called the logger PL, which is kind of built in. So we can just say logger .pl, and we can also say when we make the entry into the log, we're also going to say what the ID is. So PID, like process ID, right? It's of user, which is the account that you guys are using right now. So we do, all right, and that's it, right? So basically, the idea is you kind of create, you bring in syslog, then you kind of set the domain socket for it for Unix, and then you open it, indicate who's writing, you know, that user, what you write, and then you close it, okay? So this is just meant to be a simple example, more so to kind of just show Perl to you, okay? You can get this script, as I said, from the GitHub. And that's it. You know, that's basically it. I encourage you actually to rewrite this in Python, all right? So basically that I would suggest that you take kind of this logic and figure out how to do the exact same thing, but with Python. All right, so now that this script is written, let's go ahead, save it, and now I'm going to run it to see that there are no errors. So now instead of Python, you write Perl, and it's called write to log. So let's see if it gives me any errors. All right, it ran perfectly. So now the question is, did it write? Okay, so to do that, notice that if I do Pwd, this is where I am. But according to the handout, I should be going to, the root. So I'm in root now. Notice I'm in root. I'm going to do ls, and then it says go to var. Well, there's the var folder, so I'm going to navigate to var. Okay, I'm in var now. All right, and I'm going to cd into var. Ooh, I was already there, I guess. And then I do pwd again, and and now I know where I am. I can do ls. Okay, now I want to go into log, right? So it says var log. So I'm going to go into that folder. All right, so sorry, so where was it? Okay, yeah, we're gonna go to log and ls. So now, as you can see, there's a lot of files in there, right? There's a lot of files. Now, on the handout, it says look for either messages or syslog. So that I can see a syslog there. And there are messages. You guys see a messages in there? I only see a syslog, right? So then I'm going to go and what do? I can do cat syslog. All right. So do you guys think it worked? What do you guys think? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
It worked.
Yeah, it did work, right? Because yeah, it worked for you guys. That's great. You can see it's right there, in fact, right? Purdue. So write your name in there. You can see it writes, and it's basically an entry into like a system log file. And that's, it just shows you that you can write scripts of any logic, collect information, monitor it, and then write it to an actual log file. It's going to have all the entry information that you want. The process is right there, right? All of the things that we might need. Okay, so that's basically it. That's the idea. So I ran it in Perl. However, you guys have to run it from your cron tab, right? So now I'm going to go back. So hopefully that made sense. I'm going to go back to the root, to ls, so a little bit of navigating. So now I want to get to my desktop. I'm in the root directory. So I cd to home. Yeah, so I'm going to cd to home. I'm going to do ls, then seed. And now I'm going to look at desktop. Right, and I'm just back where I was before. All right, there's that. Now in the handout, so let me clear. In the handout, it says, figure out how to get to cron. So cron tab -e, for instance, right? And it actually says to you, the easiest editor is bin nano. So then we can take number 2. And 2 is already there because it's already highlighted here. So really, you just have to hit enter. Okay, so hopefully this is your cron tab file, right? Everything in here with a £sign is a comment. Okay, so definitely take a look at that. Read through this, please. I'll make sure I'm pretty sure I've covered all of this, but you know, it doesn't hurt to look. Provides an example here, pretty much like the one I gave you. So this one's a good one because what is this doing? What is tar in Linux? Who knows what tar is? No one? It's for compression. So basically, you're going to compress or decompress a file, okay? Given the parameters here. So for example, you can run a backup of all your user. Let's see what it says. Of all your user accounts, right? At 5 a.m. every week with the following, right? So we've talked a little bit about that. So var backups home, and then you copy home and you back it up. All right, so tgc.tgc just means it's an extension. So I would recommend also that you do this one, right? Play around with this, you know, have some files in your desktop probably, and create a backup of it. And then run it, you know, here obviously you don't have to wait for 5 a.m. Just change this to be your time. It's very important that you have. Notice that my time is not really correct here, but you guys have already some commands to reset the time to an appropriate time. And then here, so now the trick is you're going to come down here where you see this space is where you're going to write your cron entries. Remember that a cron entry is written, you know, one line, right? So for instance, remember it's got the 5, right? You need to set that up, and then this is the command. So if I was to run a script that we just wrote, you would type Perl. Remember that more than one white space is allowed in the command part. So you can do Perl write to script. I think it was like that. .pl. You see that? Or you can make it executable, right? That's also, you know, something that you can play with, right? You know, // if, but that assumes that it should, the script has the shebang like the one we had, and it also has the, it's been made executable, which by now you guys should know how to do as well. So you will write all of your entries. So my recommendation is, you know, write an entry here, and then, you know, if you don't want to use it, just comment it out. And then look at the next one. When you want to run it, you know, uncommented. And then very important, obviously, the time needs to be set. So when you test your scripts, you know, test them for like the next 5 minutes. But then when you actually write them in your, so you can show screenshots of you running it like, you know, in the next hour. But when you actually give me the solution, it has to be for that particular problem. So, you know, if it's at 2 a.m. on a Friday, you know, you need to write it correctly. So I do understand that, you know, some of you might have questions about that, but you know, hopefully it makes sense, right? So just run it, have a screenshot, show it, trying to show some evidence of it, and then just write the correct entry for the given problem. And then you know, this is nano, so Control X and save. So let me not do that. So I'm going to do Control X, Y, enter, right, and then and you can see that my entry is in there. Is this clear, guys? You have any
That
questions?
seems pretty clear.
Pretty clear, right? Pretty easy. All right, good. So that's basic. Oh, there's another question. Yeah, so somebody said a SIP. So SIP actually is not. So when you, this is not SIP, this is tar-gc, so it's another format of encryption, right? So going back to the TGC over here, so it's not SIP, it's a type of compression, but a different type. There was another question on the chat. Okay, so I don't know. Have you guys, are you guys having trouble just launching Cron?
It launched okay for me, at least.
Yeah, so it's only some. All you have to do really in theory is that, just notice I'm running it with the $sign. What does that mean? The $sign means that whenever you're confused, just type ID, right? And it tells you that you are seed, right? You know, if you say, who am I? It tells you you're seed. If this $sign was a £sign, then when you did ID or who am I, it would give you 0, which is root, and it would say root. Okay, so notice that I'm just running it with the privileges of my account. So this is going to be the cron tab associated with your account, basically. So it should just be like that. Like that. All right. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
All right, guys. So that's, you know, that's the lab for today. Okay. So remember, so it's work on the lab. If you have any questions, I don't have any more new material. I just want you to work on the problems. I'm going to go ahead now to the bright space. And this one. Right. So these are the assignments. So let's go ahead. So there's going to be a link for the Wireshark reading, and then there's going to be one link for the rest. Okay. So all of this. So let me go ahead then and create those links. So in the task scheduling in Cron, right? There's the Wireshark reading, by the way, PDF. So I'm going to create a new assignment. Homework. Wireshark reading. Okay. So this is going to be due. So today is February 3rd. So this is due a week from today on the 10th by 10 p.m. You know, submit a one-page summary of the attached interactive Wireshark PDF. Okay, so remember, you have to download the files, the PCAP files. You have to open them in Wireshark, and then basically, you know, point and click as the document describes. Okay, so this is gonna open now, and it's gonna stay open until Saturday. Right, submit a one-page summary of the attached interactive Wireshark PDF. Is this clear enough?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that's the first link, and then the next link is the rest, right? So the rest, so I'm going to add that one too. Okay, so that's homework. Going to be TCP Dump, Perl, Cron, and Cron problems. Should be enough. So this also will be due on the 10th. See it now, and it'll stay open until Saturday. So complete the TCP dump, Perl with Cron, and Cron problems. And everything else okay. Everything else in the attached Word document as described during lab time. All right, so that should be clear enough, I think, as well. So I'm going to hit save on this one. All right, and now you have your 2 assignments loaded there. Okay, so that's the plan for today. It's just I want you to work on these problems, and then next week I'll continue with task scheduling and Cron in the lecture, plus also, you know, we'll get into find and grep and awk and all of those problems. Okay, so now if you have any questions about anything, so I'm just going to leave it as open lab. I'm really going to stop recording at this time and just, you know, work on these problems. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay?
All right, sounds good. Thank you.